Hi everybody, my name's Kevin Long. I am from Crowd Compass. We're here at Thetis for Innovation in Motion. Tonight's topic is Go Big Data with Business Intelligence Tools. We have here with us Brad, and Brad Peters is the founder and CEO of Birst. Brad, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
And Brad, where are you based?
We're based in San Francisco.
And where did you just fly in from?
I just flew in from San Francisco, but last week or a couple days ago I was in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia. Okay, so he's not quite as jet lagged as I thought he might be, so I won't be able to totally take advantage of him up on this panel. 2 days, 48 hours. We'll see what we can do with that. Just a couple quick announcements before we dive in to some panel discussion. If you want to tweet, we're using the hashtag InPDX. Every month at Innovation in Motion, we do this online as well. If you want to watch it live from home, that is livestream.com/Innovation in Motion. Paul Colette, Paul, raise your hand. Paul films every week and does live streaming. If you need any of these sort of support, Paul is a great person there for you. And just a quick thank you for the sponsors. It's really nice to be able to come and have food and beer and drinks. We used to have PBR back when I had to pay for it. Now other people pay for it, and we actually have real food and real beer. So I just want to have the sponsors come up and make a couple quick announcements if they'd like. And I'd like to call my dear to my heart, my favorite sponsor, Crowd Compass. Crowd Compass, would you like to say a word? Let me give you the microphone over here. So I know. The millions of people on live stream are going to want to hear it as well.
I'm Andrew Beeks. I am one of the sort of people finders over at Crowd Compass / People Keeper Happier. But we don't have too many worries about that, so lucky for me, I get to spend every day working with Kevin Long. And right now we're growing like mad. We're like 55 people over in Southeast Portland, probably be about 80 or 90 next year, and we're part of Cvent, which is one of the leading sort of event software companies in the world. We're growing, as a whole, about 45% year over year right now, which is pretty insane. Recently went public, and right now we have a really unique opportunity, which is one that, if you've been to enough of these things, may sound harrowing, because it's the opportunity to work with one Mr. Kevin Long every single day. We are currently hiring for a director of marketing. We're also hiring for various technology roles, including Ruby developers, mobile developers especially. But specifically, obviously, the director of marketing would pertain to most of you, I think. And we're really looking for sort of a marketing technologist, marketing analytics person who can really drive our future growth. So if you are interested, or if you just want to check us out, we are at www.crowdcompass.com. And if you want to get to my special part of the page, it's /careers. So thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, and CorSource. Does anyone want to say a word from CorSource? CorSource played a big part in shipping in this speaker from the far distant lands of San Francisco.
Hi, my name is Andrew Herman. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of CorSource. We're very excited to be here tonight and help sponsor Innovation in Motion. For those of you who don't know CorSource, we are a technology professional services organization that help our customers accelerate their growth through business intelligence, software development, and staffing. So if any of your companies have any initiatives going on around those areas, don't hesitate to reach out to us. But thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. And one last quick announcement, TIO is a great support of ours as well, and just a super exciting job that I heard from a long-time Innovation in Motion member, Mike. Mike, you want to make a quick job announcement?
Hi, I'm Mike Wills with Integra, formerly Integra Telecom, and we are hiring a marketing operations analyst, so somebody who's going to go through data, market segmentation, work with our marketing automation platform, Eloqua, one of the best in class, and help us achieve our goals in the future. And we're looking for somebody right now. So you can talk to me afterwards. I've got job descriptions too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Brad, tell me, is that a BI job or is that a marketing automations job?
It's probably a bit of both, would be my guess. BI has historically been something that you put in the back room and wasn't particularly as business focused as it probably should be. And one of the great revolutions that's going on right now is BI is moving from the back office to the front office. It's something that is becoming much more business focused, and business users are having hybrid roles where they have. It's most powerful when somebody who actually understands the business is the one that's sifting through data, because if you can't interpret it or apply it, it's not terribly useful. So.
Okay, so Brad, I would like you to just take a couple minutes and talk about your company, talk about what you do, and just give like a little bit of framework of where you guys are at.
Sure. So Birst is a business intelligence and analytics company. We were born in the cloud, which is pretty important because for those folks who've been in this space, analytics and BI are not new. The concept's been around for 30 plus years. People have been doing various types of analysis for a long time. And anybody who's been in the industry knows it's hard. There's a lot of messy pieces to it. I previously to being one of the founders of this company was actually at Siebel Systems for a number of years and managed the analytics product family over there, which is now Oracle's BI product family. And we had a great product, had a great time with our customers, selling them a vision, helping them understand what they can do with data. The challenge was the tools were very difficult to install and use. Much like many of the tools of that era and software that era, nobody really loved to install them and use them, and nobody really likes to use SAP. Mm-hmm. So we saw what was going on with the cloud. We saw what was happening, and we saw a real opportunity, because what we would typically do is we would provide folks BI tools, and they'd get them all excited. They'd write $1 million check, and then you'd meet them a year later at our user week and say, hey, how far has it gone? What have you gotten? And we talked about all this great stuff, and they'd say, well, I think I got a report done. And it would be this huge gap between the vision and the reality, because there was just so much heavy lifting. And watching what was happening with the cloud revolution in terms of taking software and not just engineering in the features and functions, but engineering in the usability and deployability, that's really what we set out to do, is to take something which has a great vision, great promise, great capability, but has historically been very difficult to get off the ground, mm-hmm. and use the cloud to bring it together. And at this point, we're serving thousands of organizations across the world. We've just raised a large round of funding, $38 million a couple months ago.
Brad's buying beers after the panel down the street.
The board examines all of my expenses.
Yeah.
Okay,
it'll be PBR.
There you go, PBR. There's a badge of honor around that. We're expanding. We're having a great time, because the BI has gone through spurts, and the previous wave of companies that had innovated in this area did so probably the late 90s, and they're now getting pretty old. So there's a lot of opportunity for folks like us to come in and really clear out the undergrowth.
Great. Is anyone here from SAP? Anyone?
I think you're supposed to say stuff like that, right?
SAP jokes will be allowed all evening.
Okay, are Oracle jokes allowed?
Okay, so the Innovation in Motion members have requested to not go so high level. Like, we want to see the dirty details. We've gotten some feedback on that. So Brad's team was nice enough. I said, look, I want to start this thing out, because we read these articles about BI, we hear about business intelligence tools, big data, blah, blah, blah. What does that mean? Like, I understand marketing automation tools. I understand, different tracking tools. I understand databases. But when it comes to actually seeing a BI tool, I've just never used it. And I think a lot of people are in the same situation. Right. So Brad and his team were nice enough, and I said, pull together a big company, pull together a company that is, medium-sized business, and just give some examples and some scenarios. And I actually want to see the tool. And so I'll let you take it away here. And we're going to start out with Citrix.
Cool. So before we do this, maybe a little bit of just setting the stage here in terms of what BI is meant to do. The term business intelligence came about, 15 or so years ago, as a way to try to unify all this stuff that people were doing with data. The cool thing about computers is you can do a lot of stuff with them, and for many years the focus of them was building applications to run various parts of the company. You can go up and down the org chart of a company, and everything's got an application: marketing automation, sales automation, supply chain automation. Everything's got an automation next to it. All these forms sitting, dropping records in databases. Well, after a while, all those records pile up, and people want to do something with them. And so really the world, from our perspective, is kind of divided into Operational applications, the things here on the upper left, the Siebels, the SAPs, the Salesforces, those types of systems where people are using them to automate some function, to create process and structure around some business that they want to create control over, and to maintain history. And analytical applications, which their whole purpose is to take all that great data that was generated in those applications and help you make sense of them. You can kind of think of all these other applications on the left, these operational applications that are out there, as the kind of the flight recorder for your business. Everything you do, if it was worth it to automate, worth it to put in an application, it's probably pretty important, and those applications are pretty much tracking every major activity that you do as a business. That's going in a database somewhere, and it's sitting there, sitting on a disk somewhere. Wouldn't it be useful if you could measure the operations of your business so that you could actually manage that? We like to say, well, you can't manage what you can't measure. So what BI is all about doing is we don't generate any data. Our job is to take the data that's already there in some place that you're keeping somewhere, pull it together and try to make sense of it so a business user can make a decision with it. And that's key too, because there's a lot of reports, a lot of people who like analysis for analysis' sake alone, but if you can't actually make a decision as a result of that analysis, it's not worth anything. So a big part of BI is trying to understand what decisions you can make based on facts that would change the way your business performs and manages, and then aligning those decisions to the various pieces of data in your organization that you might have, and trying to feed one with the other. And if you can do that, you can take your employees and make them more effective.
Okay. Brad, move your microphone a tad away from your mouth.
You are the microphone.
No, a little bit farther away.
Farther away.
Okay, so I feel like what you're talking about is this next slide that I'm looking at, which was this really weird picture that Andrew at CorSource showed me, and then it was the first time I really started to understand BI.
So here's the deal. A lot of folks know Citrix as a software company. What they don't necessarily realize is Citrix is also a hardware company. And in fact, I think that's approaching half of their business. When we started working with them, it was a much smaller percentage. I'd like to think we had something to do with it. But as a hardware company, it's a harder business than a software company because you don't actually get to recognize revenue until you ship something out the door. So people like Google and Apple and the folks over here on the right, Amazon, would use Citrix's products to speed stuff over the internet, and they order stuff. But Citrix, being a technology company, has a challenge that a lot of technology companies have, which is a lot of their orders come very, very late in the quarter. And when that happens, I don't know if anybody else has experienced that phenomenon. It's not the most fun thing in the world, but that does happen. And the challenge is, if they get an order late in the quarter and they can't ship something, they obviously can't recognize the revenue. So one potential cure for that is to keep a lot of inventory on hand. But if you do that in a low-margin business, that's very expensive. So the challenge is to try to figure out and look across all the different things that they're doing in their business and try to manage it so they can make sure they can ship as much as possible, but keep inventory as low as possible. In order to do that, they have to understand what the sales reps are actually seeing in the channel. They have to see what's already been purchased. They have to see what's being built on the shop floor, what's sitting in the supply chain about to be delivered to the factories, what's going to be returned from customers for service issues. To be able to correlate all that information, figure out what they have on hand, to minimize the stuff that they need to have on hand, but also maximize their ability to ship product when it gets ordered. That's a lot of different data sources, a lot of different components that they need to pull together to have that visibility. When we first came into Citrix, the guy who runs the manufacturing group there basically had a room, I don't know, about a third the size of this room. And the way he managed it was he had a person that did nothing but create spreadsheets. That person would pull data from all different parts of the business, and they would go up and they would paste them to the wall. And there were like 7 layers deep spreadsheets, and she would just go around and just keep replacing spreadsheets. And there would be graphs of stuff, and he would just walk around and make decisions. Ship that, don't ship that, that kind of stuff based on these
When was this?
5 years ago.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, the single biggest BI tool in the marketplace is Excel. So the challenge with that is it's not a real tight loop, and it's really hard to stay on top of things. And it's very manual, very labor intensive, and the responsiveness was low. So what they wanted to be able to do is pull data from all of these different sources and have the system crunch it into usable displays and formats, so they, an operations center, if you will, a dashboard to be able to make those decisions very, very quickly. And then in the quarter, every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, be able to see refreshed data. And using traditional tools, that was very, very difficult to do because there's so many different pieces and it's hard. So we worked with them in a short period of time. We're able to take data from a whole bunch of different sources, model it, bring it together so they could then measure what inventory is sitting where, how much orders are coming from here, which types of products where.
And you guys want to see what that looks like?
So yeah,
it looks like this.
This is what it looks like right now. Didn't start out that way. It started out with a smaller piece, but the whole thing about BI is unlike like an ERP system or something like that.
This is that lady doing spreadsheets right here. She ran around the circle.
She just kept going.
Stacked them up.
She just kept going.
No, so explain me this.
So I'll get at a high level. Basically, every one of those, you can't really see it. There's so many of them. Every one of those purple thingies is actually a table. It's a piece of data
right
coming
here,
from some source. Yeah.
Here.
And every line is a relationship between a different table. All of those relationships exist in your data. So the idea that you can press one button and things magically happen, I mean, if anybody tells you that, turn around and run. This stuff is hard. There's a lot of complexity. But what BI is about is modeling that complexity so that the next time you have to do something, you're not manually recreating that spreadsheet. You're building that in. So when we started with this with her and with Citrix, there was maybe 1/20th as many of these sources. It was a lot smaller. But with BI, you're constantly adding new things. You're constantly adapting. Every month you'll add a new thing. And over time it builds up. And now I think there's 370 sources in this thing from all across the entire supply chain of the business. And they get pretty comprehensive visibility of the business. Here's a screenshot of one of them.
So this is Birst
showing some supply chain data. And this is really about, I think it's an RMA dashboard, just showing returns and
so this is going through all the different touch points, and you're pulling sources of data, and then you're figuring out how to graphically show it.
We're bringing them together. We're modeling how all those pieces fit together, and then we're allowing you to ask questions by pulling elements from each one and doing calculations on all the related pieces of data.
So just specifically, like, show us one or two of these charts and what, because people can't quite see it back there. What exactly is it?
This is the way dashboards typically work is you start out at a high level and you see some macro trend in your business. Like here in the upper left, you're looking at return trends by product category over time. So you're looking at, in those particular periods, how much was returned, where did it spike? We had a problem in Q2 clearly across the board, and then I think we ran out of data in Q4. But for this example, but you start out with something like that, and if you see a spike or a trend, the goal is then not to have this be a static report, it's to be able to drill into it. Okay, so now show that to me by month. Okay, break that down by individual product line. And what you're looking for is outliers. You're trying to find the things that don't fit the pattern historically. And you're trying to compare over time, you're trying to compare across products, you're trying to compare across all these different business dimensions that you have to look for the outliers. Because once you find the outlier, you can find something that you can fix. And then, obviously, once you find that, you can take action and go do something. Oh, there was a problem that has a faulty design, or there might be a bad lot of inventory we pulled in.
So is it almost like a monitoring system for a lot of companies that they're looking at things and they're like, the lines are looking great, the charts are looking great, everything, and then it's like, what is that weird thing? It's like the Star Trek ship, and they see like the red light blinking, and it's like, we're losing oxygen.
We have those.
Let's go to the far right door, right? Like they're actually they're picking one thing out. Unlike a lot of these other marketing automation tools that like every single piece of data you're using all the time, right? Whereas there's a lot of monitoring and watching and then drilling into one area.
BI serves a couple of different purposes. One of the common modes is business monitoring. So it's keeping track of trends and looking for the outliers. But another one is discovery, which is not this. I'll show something later on. We'll show some slides of a different UI that lets people. This is where an analyst has said, okay, I'm going to lay out standard ways of looking at data so you can look at comparisons of different metrics across products, across time, to look for outliers and find problems, spot issues, and go fix things. Another thing is start with a blank slate and just start laying data elements on a screen and try to see if you can uncover something. That's the discovery aspect. And both of them are important. Usually what happens is somebody there's some obvious things that you're going to want to monitor, but other times you'll go and discover some pattern or trend, and if it's useful, then you'll turn it into a production analytic, and you'll put that on a dashboard and run your business that way.
So Citrix, what happened from that?
So in this case, it was pretty amazing. inventory turns are one of the primary measures of how much inventory they have to keep on hand. They were able to actually increase turns by 5x, which is pretty astounding, and get all the while getting their on-time shipments up to 99%. I won't say what they were before, but obviously this means revenue. That means if you don't ship something on time, that's lost revenue. It goes straight to the top line. They're a public company. They don't like that. But at the same time, margins are important as well. So it had a real impact on the business.
Okay. So Brad and his team pulled together 2 more examples so we can dive into this. I think this is an interesting example. It's a little bit closer to maybe some people sitting in the room here at Build.com. Why don't you go ahead and talk about this scenario?
Sure. I don't know if folks know Build.com. It's the largest retail home improvement website in the United States. Think of them as sort of Home Depot, but online. There's all sorts of products that they have. They're in Chico, California. One of the reasons that they're so successful is they do a really great job of analyzing who comes to their website, who orders what, how they market. They have so many different products and so many different categories. They have to figure out very carefully how they market to different segments. And this is a more customer-oriented example, but it's understanding customer behavior. Who's buying what, when, where, and how, so they can figure out, to some extent, the profitability or lifetime value of the customers that they're working with. Obviously, it's worth a lot to get a high-value customer, so you're going to market heavily to those segments if you can understand what those segments are. And if you have low-value customers, you can actually have unprofitable customers. You can be over-promoting to certain segments. So what they've been able to do is pull data from their actual retail operations, which they run online, and meld that together with online website data from things like Omniture and stuff like that, to pull that together to correlate what do people do, what activities do they take. Let's develop a profile of the customers, not just demographics that they may have filled out in a profile, but also behavior, how many times they click, where they go.
Is that their social interaction? So when you talk about, so they are analyzing customers' browsing behavior and social interactions to determine like the marketing attribution.
Social's interesting. I think it's a...
Does social just mean I took an action, I sat on a site, or does it mean social as in...
I look at social as they did something on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or something.
Okay.
I think what they're looking at is actual customer behavior. And this goes back, this is another key thing about BI and analytics, is that most people think when you're doing analysis of customers or things like that, you're looking at demographics. You're looking at how, age groups and income categories, and that's important. That's important. But going way back, there's all these statistics that show that really the most useful indicators of segmentation are behavior. What do people actually do? And there's this classic case in retail banking where they wanted to understand profitable customers, and one of the single most useful indicators of a high-value banking customer was the ratio of ATM visits to bank branch visits. It's a behavior. Wasn't age, wasn't how much money they had in the account, but their value to the bank was a function of their behavior.
Okay.
And they're doing a similar thing here. They're measuring every interaction they have. So anytime a customer touches these guys, whether it's on the web or they order something or they give them some piece of information, they're pooling it together and they're building a profile of demographics and behavior, and they're using that to segment their customers so they can, instead of treating all their customers the same, they're trying to get to a segment of one, treat each customer uniquely based on how they interact.
Have you stopped using the internet altogether since BI?
I think it's possible. I love the fact that they're tailoring things to me rather than treating me like, anybody else that's out there. I like the fact that they're doing some work for me.
Understanding the most the second bullet point here, understanding the most valuable customer and where they come from. Do they really need a BI tool to do that? Like, here's a person spending the most money and here's their demographic because I tracked them.
What a BI tool does is takes the raw data that says, here's a click, goes into a database, and allows you to then create analytical measures of how many times did they click in sequence, what did they do from A to B, and how does that correlate with other pieces of data that you got from a profile or the historical purchases that they might have had someplace else. What a BI tool does is it takes and pulls those pieces of information together and then lets a user browse and analyze that data, and then create a cockpit that people can actually see updated information.
The dashboard, so they can see it.
Exactly.
So can you talk about this dashboard for Build?
Sure. So this is showing a couple pieces of information. One is just where are people ordering from, and hotspots that folks are ordering from. They're also looking at by account what the baseline is, and a lot of folks have the long tail problem. So you want to differentiate service for the folks that are on the fewer folks that are on the higher end of the spectrum. And on the lower right here, we even have a heat map that kind of shows which segments of products and customers are where the activity is happening and which segments aren't. So the goal here is to make data which is inherently dry and boring visual, so that you can visually discriminate what's going on. There's so many studies that show that if you just show somebody a table of numbers, there's only so much information that they're going to get out of that. Put them to sleep. But when you can make it visual, your eye can pick up on so many different variants that you can't that you couldn't see in a table. Your brain, you're sort of doing mental data mining when you do that. It's amazing the patterns that your brain can pick up without having to go get a stats PhD.
Right.
And so that's what a lot of this is about, is spreading the data out so your eye can perceive the differences and the possibilities that are present in the data.
So this is a piece of data that you're pulling in, and it's because of all the different touch points. Like Mark's a friend of mine in the audience here, and he's one of the bigger marketing nerds that I know.
Yeah, okay.
Mark, couldn't you pull this in with other tools that you're using? Like you can find like location, you can find all these different touch points, or is this stuff that you're not normally finding with like, Web Trends, Marketo, Eloqua?
The problem is that you might be able to pull in that information in all the individual systems, but it's hard sometimes to combine all. For example, like I can report on geography in Salesforce, and I can report on an analytics tool.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to combine those things, and if you don't have a tool like that, you end up just going to Excel or something like that, having to do it manually.
So you're talking
exactly
about like the
case.
classic issue that like you might be able to find these in different areas, but if you can't combine them and have them being combined on their own without having to manually do it through Excel, then you have that issue.
Every application has some sort of chart or report in it, but they're very siloed. And so Salesforce will give you a count of opportunities, and it'll show you by stage. And Marketo will tell you how many leads you have, or Eloqua will tell you how many leads they generated by a campaign. But if you want to do lead to close, you need to put the two of those together.
That was very nice of Mark. I thought he was going to throw you under the bus. that was a test. I don't know if you paid him $5
I used to be
say
a customer
that.
of Web Trends, so
That was like the
that's
like
payback.
Yeah,
okay.
that was
Cool.
nice. Okay, and so what happened with Build.com?
They're
High value customers, managed customer lifetime value.
They've been able to get much higher return on their marketing dollars spent, so they've been able to really focus and target their activities and continue to refine who they go after, how they go after them, what types of campaigns are working where. You only have, there's finite marketing dollars that you have out there, so you really want to get as much juice out of them as you can.
Okay. Well, we
Wasn't
stop
that
moving.
boring?
They slip it if we don't keep moving the slides.
Hope that's not
Okay, so one more example, and then I want to just dive into a couple of like thought leader trends. I want to get on mobile tonight. I have so many things I want to get through. We only have like 20 more minutes, so we got to start ripping through them here. Time flies when you're having fun.
Okay.
Okay, so we have Jive up here. We all know Jive. They're a local hometown hero at Portland.
They're local for both of us, yeah.
Okay.
Jive has a similar situation, almost to the exact case that you were mentioning. They have a marketing automation suite, Marketo in this case. They use Salesforce for sales automation, and they have NetSuite for their ERP. So, if you want to know quote to cash, and you want to see what's going through that whole cycle, you need to pull data from those different sources to understand how your business is operating. So we've been working with their COO and their finance organization to pull data from those specific sources. Plus, everybody has at least one or two random spreadsheet sources. Sales guy puts something in a spreadsheet that plan or whatever it is. Pull those things together so that they can get they can very quickly understand where the business is at all times and be able to drill in who's using what, where, why, and what's and where the value is. And for them, it's really important because Jive, for those who don't know it, is a phenomenal social business tool used inside and outside of organizations. And for them, usage is very, very important. Understanding how companies are actually using Jive. Those that don't use, they're a SaaS tool, so renewals are important. If you're not using the tool, you're probably not going to renew. So being able to correlate usage with billing data for what people are actually buying is very important. So we help them bring that data together so they can, and not only bring it together in one spot, because BI has historically had an issue with only being for analysts, maybe a few folks that could use these tools. The real power, and for these guys, is they put this on the desktop of every customer-facing person in the company, so that when that person goes out and just before they talk to that customer, they can pull up a complete account profile of their usage, their purchasing behavior, what products they own, what they're doing, so they can have a very tailored conversation with that customer. The customer feels like they're being taken care of. They know that they know the customer well, but also if there's an issue, they can address it on the spot, and that's had some pretty positive effects for them.
So it says here, get faster insight to pipeline than manual reporting. So I have my Salesforce hooked up. I'm using web trends. I got my pipeline built up. I can see that, X amount of people are at verbal stage, X amount of people are just at proposal stage.
Right.
I have their company profiles. I have all my conversations about them. How is that going to help me speed up my pipeline?
Well, a key thing for the pipeline case is, all right, so at the beginning of the month, I had 100 deals at stage 3 in my pipeline. Now it's the end of the month, I have 100 deals at stage 3 in my pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't tell me anything. What I want to know is what happened to those 100 deals last month, because they're certainly not the same 100 deals this month. And what percentage of the deals at stage 3 are actually converting to stage 4, and how fast? So if I look at my 7-stage pipeline, where are they converting quickly? Where are the bottlenecks? Which products, which areas, which customer bases? So then I can go in and say, do I have a problem? Am I not getting the right materials to the right customers at the right time? Can I not get over those objections? That's what an analytical tool will get you over what, say, Salesforce would do, which can't.
So instead of just relying on here's my pipeline, and these people are at X%, these people are at X%, these people are at X%, they're 80% of the way there, 40%, 30%.
Where were they last week?
You're putting an extra layer on top of that funnel.
We're bringing in time, which is a big thing, because you want to measure rate of change. The analogy I use is,
I get really excited because I have all these verbals. They're one step away from closing, and you're looking at historical data don't get that excited because here's what your verbals have done.
Well, our analogy is, think of that measure is like an odometer in a car. Do you drive your car based on the number of miles you've driven? No. You need a speedometer. It tells you how fast you're going. And what BI is the speedometer. It's telling you how fast things are changing. Odometer's nice. You want to know how many miles are in the car. That's great. Mm-hmm. But it's not useful for operating the vehicle. And BI is really the same thing. If you want to use data to operate your company, you need to measure the rates of change of various things that are happening. And that's really what BI is all about.
Can you point out one or two things on here?
This is an interesting blend of, you look at usage versus allowance. This is
usage.
This is usage right here. Utilization. And they get this data from their own internal application. So this isn't web data or anything. They actually homegrown application. A lot of data in a lot of companies is actually homegrown. Top accounts is how much they're spending. So this is from NetSuite and their order management systems. And bottom accounts, obviously, these ones you have to worry about. So what they're trying to correlate is how much money people have spent with how much they're using the product to figure out if there's if there's risk associated with
they spend a lot of money and they are using it 5% of the time.
3 dudes in the company are using it, or 3 people in the company are using it, and no one else
We are going to lose this. Renewal's coming up in 6 months
Yeah.
and flags it up. Okay.
Yeah, so let's go out there and teach them how to get value out of the system.
Right. That sounds awesome. That sounds like a nightmare to set up. Is it?
No.
Did everybody see that pause? Did everybody just see that pause? How much nightmare do you want to purchase?
Look, it's not trivial, but the whole and this is actually the primary purpose of our company is to take something which was very hard to do and bring software and automation to make it a lot easier. It still takes work. There's no magic button that's going to, Staples easy
Fair
button
enough.
makes it go away. But if you can do something like this in weeks, in 3, 4, 5 weeks, create a dashboard like that from a bunch of different systems, you can drive a lot of value.
That's interesting. Well, I would like to see it get set up in my company. Maybe very soon we'll be having another conversation.
All right, give me your card.
So, Innovation in Motion, this is the holder slide in case anyone on the far side of the room wants to run across and grab a chair. Is everybody good? Does everyone like to stand? All right, we're burning calories over on the right side of the room. So, let's just step back for a second. I just want to talk about looking at the different sectors and how do you identify the need of where people use BI and where do you look at the business analytics?
So what this slide is there's a number of things going on right now. So BI, like I said before, it's been around for a long time. It's not like it was lost on people that there's data sitting in computers that we can do something useful with. It's just that it's been really hard. And there wasn't as much data as there used to be. What we're seeing right now in the last 4 or 5 years is 3 macro trends that are converging to make business analysis really central. I went to Harvard Business School some time ago. I don't a while, longer than I'd like to think. But when I went there, I remember we had a guest lecturer from MIT come in, and he went up to the board and he actually drew like a math symbol. And I thought they were going to kill the guy because, oh my God, we're business people. We don't do math. We don't look at numbers. Other people do that. That's not for us. And it's interesting now that the Harvard Business Review is writing articles on big data and analytics. This stuff that was pushed in the back that was, where other people that didn't normally deal with.
How long ago was that? Come on, I want to get a year. They were talking about big data back then?
They were absolutely not. No way. So
they're just talking about math.
Now it's cool.
Now it's cool. I mean, it's just recently, all of a sudden, it's like big data is everywhere. I feel like nobody really gets it, but you keep hearing about it, and you're getting more sophisticated into not just the trendy big data, but business intelligence and BI tools. But like, why is it getting so much traction now?
It's getting traction because there's a couple of trends. One is it is much cheaper to store data than it was before. So stuff that you would have just thrown away, it's actually affordable to keep. And now if you're going to keep it, you might as well do something with it. So that's where Facebook and Google and Yahoo and all, they came up with Hadoop and other things like that to be able to store data very inexpensively and do processing on it. So that's one driver. It's very exciting, the types of things that you can store and the amount of data that you can store. There's also been this consumerization that's been going on. So what's really frustrating a lot of employees of businesses is they go to mint.com and they get great analytics on their bank statements and their spending patterns, and then they come into their company and they have nothing. It's all rule of thumb, and it's terrible.
Right.
And it used to be all the data that you would get came from IT. Now a very small percentage comes from IT. It comes from public websites, and people are expecting IT to deliver that kind of service to them. And now cloud is out there delivering high levels of service and service experiences that you don't typically get with on-premise sources. All of that's creating a combination of expectations that business users now expect that data should be out there and be useful. I mean, the presidential campaign that just a few years ago, that was all about big data. That was all about using data in new and creative ways, figuring out the right voters to target when, where, what was happening. So all of these trends are converging to create huge demand. Also, frankly, we're just coming out of a recession, and when you come out of a recession, you're at the point where you just laid off a ton of people. The last thing you want to do is hire new people that you're nervous about having to fire again. But you have to grow your business performance. So the only way you can scalably grow performance of your business without hiring new people is to make the people you have better and more effective. And the only real scalable way in a business to do that is to use analytics to make them more effective. So all these are converging to make this a very hot topic right now.
So you have a couple slides in here. One is about demand, and one is about safe choices falling behind further.
Basically, business users are driving things now. For many years, and the pendulum swings back and forth, but there was a period of time when SAP was bought by business users, and then people moved it to IT, and it was owned by that, and business users stopped getting served. And now business users are trying to draw, if their needs aren't being served, they're finding ways to become competitive using data, and they expect that now. So a lot of what we're seeing in our industry is business users trying to take the reins back and saying, hey, look, my needs need to be served. I don't care how stuff used to get done. I need to have this information to make decisions. And that change is also driving a huge increase in interest and demand. And that, I think that's a major trend that people need to understand.
Okay, so we saw some of the dashboards. I definitely understand more of these case studies and how they work. I want to talk about, so the companies in Portland, right? Mid-sized companies, why aren't we using BI, right? Like, why is it so hard to get through? You prepared a few slides here that I thought were interesting on like the difficulties of BI and the path they have to do to get through it.
I can explain why you're not using SAP to do BI.
There we go. The first SAP joke.
I'm going to use them
You
as
get
the,
$1 every time you make an SAP joke.
Well, I have to use them for something.
Okay.
So the reality is data sitting in silos all over companies, and if the tool set is so complex, and when you develop these features by acquiring lots and lots of small companies and not integrating the products, it's very hard. You're basically building a small software development job every time you want a dashboard. And so below the size of the Fortune 500, companies couldn't afford this technology because you'd have to staff up a team and a bunch of resources, and it was a massive expense. And only Walmart could afford these kinds of things, or Harris.
This is where you're talking about why is BI so hard.
Yeah, there's all these different products from all these different vendors and all these different layers, all these different names and logos, and you got to pull them together to make all this stuff work. And every one of them is expensive. Every one of them requires specialized training. There's just a lot of stuff that you'd have to otherwise deal with. And for the first generation, that was fine because you couldn't do it at all, and Walmart couldn't do it, and then they could, and that's great. But how do we? There's all these analyst studies that show that at best 20% of the decisions in companies that can be driven by facts are. The penetration is low, even with companies that have BI.
Yeah.
And there's a huge percentage of companies that have nothing. They're just dealing with Excel. And that's all because the economics of turning this around are so high. And really what we're doing, what we're focused on is fusing these into a single, is not so much adding new features, but making the consumption of these features dramatically less expensive than they otherwise would have been. Still doesn't make it trivial.
Sure.
But if I can take it and reduce the cost by 80% over SAP, all of a sudden there's a vast set of companies, mid-sized organizations, which never could have approached this technology before that now can.
That like if you have a big sales team, and so Salesforce is incredibly expensive, and you have any sort of marketing automation tool, you are then in the realm to be able to purchase BI tools.
Absolutely.
now.
And I would argue that today, if you're not, you're probably falling behind because lots of other people now are. If you can't figure out where the holes in your pipeline are and where you're not pushing things through in the right way and where your bottlenecks are, someone else is, and you're probably losing multiple points of margin for sure just doing that. This stuff pays for itself. It's hard to generically say what the ROI of BI is because it's case study specific. But these are some of the highest ROI activities you can do because you're systematically improving the performance of people in your company.
Right. So your team was really great in putting together a series of slides, and I killed a bunch of transitions, but
Cool.
I want you to explain this slide because I'm super excited to show them this next transition.
What
is good? What good is PowerPoint if you don't put a couple like cheesy transitions in them?
That's what it's all about.
All right.
That's
So analytics, incomplete or too late. There's a huge crack in the middle of this.
The choice has usually been, look, to really get a complete picture with all these different data sources has been painful. But it takes so long, 6, 9, 12 months to pull this stuff together. So by the time you get a decision or you get a metric, it's way after you dated it. These tools haven't been agile. They haven't been very responsive. But they can give you sophisticated answers. There's another set of tools. Excel would be a great example where you can pull data together very, very quickly, but it's very manual, and you're getting a very small slice of information that may give you the wrong view because you're not getting the full picture of your business.
Okay.
And so you've had to make this choice historically. And really what modern architectures are allowing us to do is to say, okay, can we take the stuff that was complete but was horribly painful and make it much easier to consume, like the stuff that you can do now that may be small but is much easier.
You know what you're talking about? You're talking about this transition. You ready?
I can't wait.
Oh, it's incredible. Look at that. Look at that. Was that innovative or what? Man, when I saw that, I was just killing all the animation in this deck, and I'm like, I'm definitely
You gotta
leaving
keep
that
one. That's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to work on that one for a long time.
Yeah.
We had advisors.
So you're basically taking speed and you're taking the accuracy and you're bringing them together.
That's the goal. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
If you can take and make more sophisticated decisions across broader sets of data quickly, that's killer.
Okay.
And that's really what the big companies have been able to do up to now, because for them, cheap was $50 million. And they could, Walmart can throw that away, no problem. But most companies couldn't. So if we can bring that down to, a body or a fraction of a person spending time on this, the number of problems we can address goes way up.
Okay. All right. I have some slides in here that we can rip through if we have time at the end for questions. but I want to ask about mobile, and then I just want to open it up actually and take the last 10 minutes or so. I want to talk about mobile, and I want people to understand then where does Birst sit in the market, and understand what are the different segments out there in the BI industry, and then let's open up to questions. So BI and mobile. Mobile is always an interesting topic to slap onto anything because everybody knows it's changing our lives.
It's so much better when the pixels are on a phone.
That's true.
So, our view is that, look, it's another form factor. It just happens to be a form factor that puts you in the field where most business people are. And when you can put the facts at the point of interaction, it's more powerful. And as I was talking about the Jive case before, when you push this out to the people who are actually having those interactions, it's powerful. So where does mobile really have a big impact? It has an impact in people who are not generally chained to their desks. So executives are moving around a lot. They love mobile because they're constantly going from point A to point B. It also puts it puts this information in the hands of people who might be at the point of the customer. So frontline employees who are out there in the field doing things that they wouldn't be at the home office for. And so really this takes all this great information from the home office and distributes it out to people who are at the biggest point of need in the organization. It's a big form factor change.
Native apps?
Oh yeah, this is a big debate.
HTML5? You should totally go native for sure, but go on.
It's funny the religiosity that gets associated with this. In our case, we have both, just so that we don't have to have the argument. But on some place, we have a native app for iPad. A lot of executives live with that. But HTML5 is also an incredible tool set now in terms of what you can do. And so
sure.
What people have typically done in our field is the consumption is native, but authoring is something that's more broad, and that's something we look to put in HTML5. But when you can do this, when you can have it be responsive and put it on big devices, small devices, really small devices, it's hard to communicate a lot of information, but the idea is to get as much information to people in that form factor as possible.
It would be pretty amazing to have not only your pipeline as a salesperson or an executive out in the field, but be able to get it on your iPad.
Absolutely.
Okay, so last question here, and then I want to open it up to see if anyone in the audience has some questions for you. But just looking at this is an independent research study of just sort of forming out, and I thought this was really interesting of when you look at, without even needing to go into who are all of the different companies, because people can search that out, but how do you sort of segment out BI and the tools?
So this is different analysts have different way of segmenting it. Gartner has their Magic Quadrant, which has a whole variety of methodologies built in. Fundamentally, I'll explain what they do, and then I'll explain kind of how I look at it. They tend to look at vendors based on point of maturity. So if you're over $100 million in revenue, it doesn't matter how bad your product is, you're going to be in the upper right. And if you don't, you're probably in the lower left, and that's purgatory for a vendor. In this particular case, what's interesting is if you can be a smaller vendor and show innovation and show that you're really shooting above your weight class here, and that's really what we've been fortunate to be is to be in the challengers quadrant, someone who may not be that big yet, but is showing the momentum and the breadth and the.
How big are
vision.
you guys?
We don't officially quote our revenue, but we're
more people than are in this room.
More people than are in this room.
Can you talk people?
160, 170 people, something like that.
Okay, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nothing to sneeze at.
It's more than it's fun.
All right. And how many years? How many years have you guys been working on your tool?
We've been at this about 8 years. So there's, if you think about business objects, probably spent.
You've been doing this for 8 years.
I
BI
know,
tools.
I know. Well, we're the fastest company in BI to ever have reached the point where we're at. All the other companies took a lot longer. Business objects, ClickDeck, Tableau, they all took longer. We've.
So 8 years, was it still big data and business intelligence? Was that the terminology?
Big data didn't exist 3 years ago.
Right, it's that new. What was the terminology when you guys started?
It was BI's been around for maybe 10 years.
Okay.
It was decision support before that. And then it was just reports before that. And there were a bunch of, it goes back 30 years. But
and you were super happy when big data hit the mainstream.
All right.
All right.
This is an exciting place to be.
Cool. So you've been super good about being open about the whole thought leader and where you are at and giving some really great case studies. Maybe now you can give a shameless pitch. I'd like to know why we should actually go with, I'm probably not going to go with SAP, but you should tell us why we should go with Birst.
Fundamentally, came together as a bunch of veterans who'd lived through this. We didn't approach the problem of, hey, this stuff should be easy because I've seen charts and charts are pretty. A lot of folks have done that. This industry is rife with folks that have a hard time understanding why it's hard. They get into it, they start a company, go, I'm going to do a charting thing, and then they realize it's not about the chart, it's about the data. Mm-hmm. And it's taken years for us to build this because we started from the bottom up to make sure that we got the data, we could actually pull the data together and get the data right so that you can then really answer quality business decisions. Our approach was, some folks had been, let's take the simple version of BI, let's take a simple problem and make that easy to use. Other folks are, let's throw 40 different products at it, so with enough, you can hire Accenture, and $40 million later, you got a solution. Our approach is unique in the industry, which was, let's use software and take many of the processes. We've now seen 20 years of experience of how these systems get implemented, and they run through common best practices. You can go to the library and you can get books on data warehousing and BI, and they have design patterns for how these things get built. So why can't software be smart enough to automate a lot of those functions? Because if we can do that, we can dramatically reduce the time, effort, and energy it takes to deliver these products. So Birst is unique in the sense that we focused our energy, our patents, our engineering on not trying to solve a simpler version of the problem and pretending it's not as hard as it is, or just delivering a bunch of stuff out there that people have to integrate, but really bringing automation to bear to this, and as a result, engineering out a lot of the work and hours that go into this. It's about making the process agile. And really, there's nobody else that's thinking about it that way. There are folks that, we're going to stick it in memory and all the problems go away. Well, they generally solve simple problems that Excel couldn't quite do. And then there's other folks that have lots and lots of tools. No one's really said, let me actually try to tackle this thing with automation. And it's actually quite effective when you do it right. And really, I don't know why anyone didn't do that before, but perhaps it's a lot of work.
What company's going to win the business, the BI race?
Obviously, we are.
Nice. All right. Just checking. Just checking. Okay. Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Start with you, Paul. Paul, let me give you a mic so the millions of people at home can hear you. Okay. Try again.
I'm Paul. I'm with Regents. So just to pick up an example that you brought up, with Salesforce and Marketo. What you said. I am really curious about, how do you do the modeling? So do you use like principal component analysis? There's a million ways to do it, and I'm curious, how do you do it?
This is one of the challenges in our industry. Every word is overloaded 15 different ways. So when I say model, I don't mean predictive model necessarily. I mean, we do have predictive modeling, but data modeling. So what we're doing is, when we're bringing data in, we're decorating that raw data with extra information. This column means certain things. It's an attribute. It rolls up this way. This data set, this piece of data relates to that data this way, so that when a user takes product category and revenue and pulls it together, we've defined revenue. We've modeled what revenue is in terms of the different data components in various tables, and we defined how the system can weave its way from the transaction table all the way to the product table, so you can roll all that stuff up and figure out what that is. So that's what modeling does. Modeling puts all that higher level information, that metadata about your data, so that a business user can ask those higher level questions without having to go in and do one-off crazy database queries to pull that stuff together. Make sense?
Just say your name and company.
Mike Wills with Integra. So my question is, everybody sets up Salesforce differently. They use it differently. Opportunities, leads, contacts mean something different to every company that does it.
Yep.
Same thing with Marketo or Eloqua.
Absolutely.
How do you automate something that so many people essentially ruin the tools by customizing it in their own ways?
Yeah,
That's a great question.
This is awesome. We've been working. Well, this is the crux of what makes Birst different. Is when I was at Siebel, we thought we could solve that problem, or we thought the idea is, let's create analytical applications. Let's pre-build a bunch of reports about the Siebel data model, and we'll just sell that, and it'll all be done. The problem was, nobody used Siebel vanilla. And all the interesting fields were the ones that they added. And obviously those are the ones that they're going to want to report on, because if they went through the trouble of adding it, they're going to report on it. And oh, by the way, I don't care just about what's in Siebel. I wanted to know what was also in SAP, because that's what people actually ordered versus what the sales guy said he was going to order. Same thing happens in Salesforce. 4 or 5 years ago, we asked a lot of our customers, when they were coming in, we would ask, are you vanilla Salesforce? We've stopped asking that question because everybody would say, oh yeah, we're vanilla. We've customized a couple of things. And then we'd point Birst to it, suck in all the objects they're using, and there are custom fields and custom objects all over the place. Oh, I didn't realize we did that. I don't even know who did that. But obviously that's the interesting stuff. I don't even know what vanilla Salesforce looks like. So that's part of the discovery process in the early stage. So what we do is make the process of turning any data into an analytical model more quickly. So what we essentially have done is created a higher level abstraction. If you decorate these different columns, Birst will generate the analytical equivalent of the data that you have in an automated fashion. So we actually build a data mart for you under the covers automatically. And we also do create content ahead of time to get you a head start, but everybody does this differently. Everybody wants to integrate with a different finance system or a different marketing system. And so instead of trying to say that that's not going to exist because it exists everywhere, let's take the steps that everybody does every time they do that, raise it to a higher level of abstraction, and try to make that go faster. You still have to do the work, but those design patterns become much quicker to implement. Does that make some sense?
And how long does that process take for a company with, say, 400 salespeople?
It's not the number of salespeople, it's what they've done to Salesforce. It's amazing what some small companies have done to it in the process. Let's completely create all new objects for everything. If you were using Salesforce directly out of the box with no custom changes and no custom fiscal calendars or anything like that, it can be done in hours. But everybody does. And so what we typically do is we assume they're going to be bringing in some external objects. We assume that there's some percentage of the stuff is customized. And so we're talking a matter of couple weeks to go through that process and it means discovery time. We're going to go interview you, figure out what's important, those kinds of things, and then or somebody like CorSource or something like that is going to go do that, and then they're going to run you through that process. And if the more applications, the more tables, the more data sources, obviously the longer that process gets. It's really a function of data complexity, not number of users or even data volume. You can have a single table with 1 billion records. That's trivial to deal with. It's when you have 500 tables with 10 records each that's a pain. And we see, that's Citrix case right there.
Question in the back. Oh, we got a runway back here. This is why we have the Janet Jackson microphones. We can make it.
Sure, I was really interested when you were talking.
Can you say your name and company?
Oh, yeah, I'm Martha Brook, Interaction Metrics. So I was really interested when you were talking about the reasons behind why there is big data. And to me, obviously you hit on a couple of them, but a significant one that I'm hoping you can comment on is there's been this confluence of...
say unstructured data.
Yeah, well, yeah. But there, specifically what I'm thinking of is there's been this confluence of people and their convenience factor, and people and behavior and sensors. So specifically, the technological innovation that's made big data available is sensors and how small they've become. And what's interesting culturally is that people are really unusual. Well, I would say probably, it seems unusually easy to give up their privacy, right? And so they're using mobile, they're using sensors, and that's part of why big data is big data. It's not just that we're able to house so much data, it's that we're creating so much data, and people are giving up so much data. So my question to you is, I'm wondering if you can sort of overlay business intelligence on top of these data points that are coming in. Because what's interesting about these data points is that they speak to behavior and real-time behavior. And that's where, as you say, business intelligence becomes very, very interesting, right? Is that it's able to access and create meaning out of behaviors. So that was a long-winded question, but I'm hoping you can address that.
I think so. Obviously one of the core things that's happening today is much more data is being stored than was ever being stored before. A lot of it's machine generated. It could be from the Internet of Things, but even when Yahoo created Hadoop, it wasn't for that. It was for web page stuff. And they wanted to track all the raw interactions the customer had. And it used to be that stuff would be thrown away, but now every interaction that you have with a person, every interaction that exists that a machine can store, and not even necessarily human interaction, Splunk is really big looking at just log data. It's just machines are generating data that other machines are consuming. There's just a lot more stuff. And before we couldn't afford to store it. Now we can afford to store it and we got to do something with it. So what BI is about is, okay, great, now I've got all this stuff sitting on disk somewhere. And I have a few data scientists who know how to write really crazy queries and programs to go get this stuff. But there's like 8 of them globally that can do these things. So what does everybody else do? And what BI is about is taking and splitting that task into. Taking the hard part of understanding where the data sits, how it's structured, and how it's built, and turning that into a model of that data, and separating that from the business user who shouldn't have to recreate that each time and understand it so they can ask questions. Once you do that, you enable a much wider audience to ask questions of that data. And really, what a lot of big data infrastructures are today is just, let's store everything that comes in. Maybe we'll eventually use it. I don't know, potentially. And some things are experiments right now. And then let's create BI front ends for the things that let's explore some of it. Let's take a look at it. And then let's take the stuff that we think is interesting and let's make it production, get it out to people as business users want to consume it.
Great. So one more question here. Mike got the microphone. There's a couple in the back, but there's also a couple beers and some food left. So nobody can leave, by the way, until that's all gone. So we'll take some of those questions after. And do you have a couple minutes after to hang around and answer questions
Absolutely.
as well?
I'll take one of those beers too.
All right, sounds good.
My name's Bob Blackie with Argova, and I'm familiar with the BI space, and I know one of your differentiators is you're kind of known as the cloud BI company. Can you talk a little bit about how you took that approach and what it means for your customers?
Sure. Cloud, we're definitely known for being cloud. The interesting thing from my perspective is cloud is a delivery vehicle. It's not necessarily in and of itself a primary technology. Cloud is about how you package an application so it's easier to consume. It upgrades automatically. You're always getting the latest version. You're getting the best of what's happening. Someone else is maintaining it and monitoring it. You're taking a lot of the drudgery and plumbing out of an application, which, in the world of SAP, 80% of using it was the drudgery and the pain. I'm trying to earn my points here. So what our whole thing was is, look, if we're going to make BI, which, unlike any other category, 80% of a BI implementation's cost is not the software. It's the human capital invested in making these things work. And so instead of attacking, that piece, let's attack how much time and energy and effort it takes to do this. And the cloud is ideal because what it allows you to do is to take some very sophisticated systems and servers and package them up through an interface where the user is hidden from that. And you look at Google, it's a very, very, very complicated infrastructure, but you have one text box, in the search engine. What we're trying to take is that same sort of methodology, which is let's not try to have 50 different versions on 50 different types of servers and different operating systems and all that kind of stuff, the matrix of death that the legacy vendors care about. Let's do one thing, one place, at one time. Let's keep one version. Let's invest in the right stuff. Let's pre-integrate it so that all that stuff doesn't have to be paid every time someone wants to set this thing up. We can save a lot of value when that happens.
Cool. So just to wrap things up, I just want to play it's a 1-minute video, and Brad, your team asked me to run this. There's no sound on it, so maybe if you could just talk about it. It's your visualizer.
Oh, okay. I was getting worried there for a second.
Yeah, I know. This is a picture of Brad.
We've got some stuff our team does that I don't know about
when he was young. All right. Okay. Let's see if we can get it. Let's see if we can get it in motion.
Okay, so what you're looking at is someone basically playing taking a palette of different data elements from around their company and just throwing them on the screen and looking at different ways to represent that data very, very quickly, switching between a variety of different ways that they could lay that data out. So visually, your eye can uncover patterns of behavior, because what you're looking for is patterns that through color and shape and size and various markers and various different ways of displaying data. There's been a lot of study for how you can represent data visually so your eye can maximally discriminate stuff that's going on there. And what we want is a playground where people can quickly pop between different ways of laying data out, trellis it, put it in different categories, add colors, add shapes, add sizes, so that your eye can perceive these differences very, very quickly. And that's meant for you as an individual to explore a data set for yourself, as opposed to creating a set of pre-canned reports or something that a bunch of others are going to consume. And that's really what this is about. And the idea that you can make this stuff easy, that a normal business user can play with data sets, as opposed to having to send some data off to an analysis group and have them go off and do some work behind the scenes, that's pretty powerful, because that means discoveries can happen throughout the organization.
Is that the visualizer? Is that new with you guys?
Brand new. We just
Brand
announced
new.
it this week.
That video actually was worth it. So that was nice to see the back end of your platform. Your staff was saying you have to show this, and I'm like, I'm not going to show this video. They're like, it's beautiful, you have to show it. So that really does help get a feel for what it actually looks like and playing around in the back end of those tools.
Excel, as you're looking at a table of numbers, wouldn't you like to be able to just play with stuff and see how it lays out very, very quickly, very, very flexibly, so you can spot those patterns and then obviously go to make a decision.
Great. Well, Brad, I really appreciate you coming in. I appreciate Birst letting you have the time to come in and share people about BI tools. Hey, just so everybody knows, the future of mobile is the next series coming up. We're going to be talking about community with mobile, trends with mobile, and making money with mobile. That's going to start after a Christmas break. Just another special thanks to CorSource, who helped us upgrade our beer. We really appreciate that. TAO, Crowd Compass, my hometown favorite, and Paul Collette, who does the video. So maybe just to end this up, let's give a round of applause for our speaker, Brad Peters.
Thank you.
All right, as soon as all the beer is gone, everybody can leave.